Today is day 31 of the Karen Reed trial. I'm going to give you my daily recap. I am smiling because we are so close, guys. We are almost there. Today was a really interesting, long day. We have Dr. Rentschler back on the stand. He is the witness from ARCA. If you missed day 30, part 2, he started his testimony yesterday. So he's from ARCA. He's a biomechanist and accident reconstructionist. He says that the first step is to diagnose the injuries. He wants to know what happened to the individual, what happened to John O'Keefe, his kinematics, how did his body move. Once he knows that, he wants to ask what forces were produced on the body and were there sufficient enough for injuries. Was he hit by a car? You have to prove that this is the case and that the facts support this and there were no other options. So if you can't get that foundation, then you can't move on to anything else in that thesis. This poor guy, he's done a great job on direct exam with Alan Jackson. We start to see his report being entered. We start to see the exhibits. Then we kind of see something that we learned about yesterday for the first time, and that's the x-rays that were performed. I believe this was on January 31st. Before they did the autopsy, they do x-rays. And we haven't seen these or heard about these at all until yesterday, which is so wild because this has been going on for so long. He says there's no injuries to the hand. And this is the arm of John O'Keefe. There's no broken bones or like torn ligaments or anything that he can see in the x-ray here. We see the video again at 15 miles an hour of the exemplar car hitting the hybrid 3 arm. There's no damage done to the SUV at 15 miles per hour or at 17 miles per hour in the lab they did this test. They come back from the morning break and we have Brennan doing some questioning. Essentially, Jackson, all of the questioning was, did this vehicle make contact with the body or at all produce these injuries? And he says, no, not at all. And so therefore I could not recreate this accident because it didn't happen. So when Brennan gets into his questioning, he wants to know, first of all, the organization that hired him. We know it's the FBI. Before the trial, were you receiving any other information from that organization that hired you? He says he was made aware of certain things, but he didn't know who testified what, but the FBI was giving him information. He says that did not affect any of his analysis or his testimony. Brennan wants to know, would you agree that it helped you prepare for your testimony? He said, it made no difference to my analysis or my conclusions. It doesn't change the facts. His opinions have never changed. More of Brennan really just like going on and on and on about this. So there's a snarky line of questioning. He wants to know the phone conversations that he's had with the defense. He said he's talked to them 2 times over the phone before the first trial. He wants to know, was there any discussion as how you could portray yourself as independent? He was hired independently, but he says, no, I don't believe that there was. I was hired independently, though. We didn't talk about that. After he testified, where did you go? And Hank has seen the ID documentary with the camera footage of Dr. Rentschler. He is in the background of that footage where they're kind of like celebrating at a luncheon after he testified in the first trial. And he says he went to a lunch. He was just there to have lunch. He was waiting for a ride to the airport and he just had a ham sandwich. Brennan wants to know, did you talk about your testimony? And he says, I don't remember. He asks about the camera crew. He says there were a lot of cameras. I had no idea if I was like laughing or having fun or whatever was shown on camera. Brennan goes hard on the ham sandwich. He's like, how long were you there eating your ham sandwich? It was very snarky. And he was like, I don't know. How long does it take to eat a ham sandwich? That's how long I was there. Probably 10 minutes. Brennan wants to know who paid that ARCA bill. He says that he's paid a salary, he bills his hours, but he doesn't know anything about the billing. And he's like kind of offended that Brennan keeps pushing that point. He is not sure of Dr. Wolf's habits when it comes to messaging over Signal. He says that he had a budget for the Karen Reed's defense team. So there were things that cost a lot of money that they weren't able to do with the testing, but they did all of the testing that they could have done within that budget that Karen Reed gave them. We come back to the x-rays. He's asked his opinion about it, and he says it's up to the medical examiner to determine that. She said there were no fractures, and I agreed, and you can see that from the x-ray. So the next line of questioning is about Dr. Welcher, who is the accident reconstructionist hired by the Commonwealth. He is the one, not to be confused with Dr. Rentschler, this guy. Brennan wants to know, were you ever under the impression that Dr. Welcher was trying to reenact the actual collision when he did that blue paint test? We've seen the test where Welcher holds out his arm and he's just making contact with the vehicle. And he says, well, that was the only test that he performed, and he was trying to match the results that he wanted. That test was not intended to signify or demonstrate the position of the arm. And so Brennan was like, now that you've explained your opinion, can you answer my question? Jackson's fed up. He asks for a sidebar. The judge tells Brennan no more comments for the third time. They take sidebar, and then they go right into the lunch break. Brennan wants to know, did you read any of the pages cited or referenced in Dr. Welcher's report? He said, I didn't read any of that because he didn't cite any of those references in his PowerPoint or his report. And there's kind of like a little bit of a pissing match, like how many citations were in your report? And he says he thinks that he had 26 in his report. There was a lot of time when I felt like Brennan was trying to undermine the opinions of his expert. He said, you've talked a lot about Dr. Welcher's pain test. You don't have any information that Dr. Welcher ever claimed that his test was intended to represent exactly how John O'Keefe's arm was when it was hit. But I thought that was the whole point of the test. So it was just a little dicey for a minute. Rentschler says, we don't have the speed that John O'Keefe was hit at, correct? We don't know how he was hit, correct? And Dr. Rentschler says, if you don't have any of that data, then you can't prove that that even happened. If you don't know how something occurred, then how can you conclude that it actually occurred? Scientifically, it makes no sense. Brennan asks if he considered the debris field, and he says he didn't consider it because there was no collision. So the debris field was not necessary. Rentschler gets pretty fed up at this point. Brennan asks, did you consider the photos of the taillight shard on the front lawn? He said he was aware but did not consider. And he was like, wait, was this the one that was discovered by the leaf blower? It was this one. It was nice and snarky. He's asked about the hat. Here's the picture of the hat that was found in the front lawn. He says, did you consider how that hat got on the lawn in front of 34 Fairview? He says, that's not a part of my biomechanical analysis. There's a number of possibilities how that hat could end in the yard. And he goes, what do you think happened? And he says, I don't know, like someone could have put it there. And he was like, is that what you think? And he was like, I have no idea. Do you have a theory you want to share about planting evidence? That's what Brennan said. And there's an objection. We don't get that. We learned that he got these x-rays that were shown before the first trial, which we never heard about either. Brennan wants to know if you were aware of the object pulled from John O'Keefe's face. He said he did evaluate it and it was inconsistent with being hit with the vehicle. It was pulled from the opposite side of his face where the taillight had hit that they were alleging too. So he said it wasn't part of that alleged collision. He's shown the drinking glass in the vicinity of where John O'Keefe was found. And he says, when were you made aware of this evidence? About the glass in John O'Keefe's face. I thought we were going to have an interesting moment, but he said he's not sure, but he believes before this trial, he watched a video interview where Karen Reed said something, and that's what he should have known. Jackson is back up for redirect. He says, do you know when the taillight pieces arrived at 34 Fairview? He says, no. Do you know who put the taillight pieces in the yard? No. Are you aware that none of the pieces were found when John O'Keefe's body was discovered? Correct. Are the injuries suffered by John O'Keefe consistent with being struck by the subject Lexus? No, they are not. And this is to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty. Correct. Brennan comes up for a couple more questions and he ends with, how did the taillight break that night? And Rentschler says, I don't know. And that's pretty much it. Brennan is done. The jury is done. And now we're just talking about admitting final evidence pieces. The defense is going to rest. We then learn that Brennan says after the defense rests, he will not be calling any rebuttal witnesses, which we thought there was going to be a whole rebuttal. So we have all the evidence in. This is everything. We're not going to hear anything else. The jury's not going to hear anything else except closing. They are going to come in tomorrow without the jury to do the charge conference tomorrow. Jackson asked for an hour and a half for closing. She says she might give an hour and 15 minutes. Commonwealth says whatever the defense needs. This is a big deal. We're finally at the end. The jury is going to have this case on Friday. So that's it.